Hey guys, tonight we begin somewhere salty, somewhere stormy, and somewhere just petty enough to be divine. The sea is calm, for now. The moon hangs low like a half-eaten pastry in the sky, casting silver smudges over the waves. Gulls drift lazily above you, calling out to nobody in particular. It's the kind of night where you can hear the soft clinking of sea glass rolling over itself in the tide. And somewhere deep beneath those gentle ripples, Poseidon is irritated. Not furious, not vengeful, just annoyed. And for a god, that's far more dangerous. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, drop your location and local time in the comments. Let's see how far across the oceans this story sails tonight. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You begin just off the coast of somewhere vague but suspiciously Greek. A rocky cliff juts defiantly into the sea. And sitting right on top of it, smug as a seagull with a sandwich, is a brand new lighthouse. It's shiny, tall, painted too white for its own good. And worst of all, it's blinking. Not a helpful blink. An arrogant blink. The light sweeps over the waters in steady intervals, illuminating the sea like it's trying to supervise it. Poseidon, lord of the deep, shaker of the earth, collector of weird horses, rises slowly from his shell-crusted throne beneath the waves. His hair is tangled. His trident is already glowing. And his mood? Somewhere between mild drizzle and Category 5 drama. You ride a ripple up to the surface with him, careful to stay just behind his left shoulder. That's the safe zone. You learned that last time he was in one of these moods, back when he tried to redecorate Crete by accident. He surfaces near the edge of the cliff, eyes narrowing at the blinking tower. You can almost hear the squint. The lighthouse blinks again. Poseidon mutters something about disrespect and whatever happened to torches, and you realize he thinks this is personal. He rises a bit higher, sea foam swirling dramatically around his waist. A crab clings to his elbow in mild panic. You resist the urge to name it. Poseidon raises a hand and points at the structure like a teacher calling on a student who absolutely didn't do the reading. You dare? He asks. The lighthouse, being made of stone and a government grant, says nothing. But it blinks. And somehow that's worse. Poseidon snarls. A gentle swell slaps against the rocks like a watery slap on the wrist. You lean closer. Do you think it's mocking me? He asks without turning around. You open your mouth. Blink. Maybe. He grunts. It doesn't even blink on beat. It's smug. I know smug. The lighthouse, as if on cue, blinks again. Scholars still argue whether that blink was precisely timed or just an unfortunate accident. What they do agree on is this. It was the exact moment Poseidon decided he was going to spend the next 6 days arguing with it. And so, the first wave crashes, just a little too high against the rocks. Poseidon folds his arms. The lighthouse says nothing, but it keeps blinking. And the sea? The sea just settles in for the show. You spend the next morning watching Poseidon argue with a rock. Not metaphorically. Literally. He's standing waist-deep in the shallows, arms crossed, delivering a full monologue to a cliffside like it's part of an underperforming chorus. Do you see it? He asks, gesturing furiously toward the lighthouse. Standing there, all symmetrical and smug, blinking like it's got something to prove. The cliff does not reply. But the wind rustles across its mossy ridges in what might be mistaken for a sigh. You float nearby, doing your best impression of a curious bit of sea foam. It's day 2 of the situation, and things are escalating slowly. Poseidon hasn't thrown his trident yet, but he's definitely waved it around menacingly, which, in divine terms, is the ancient Greek version of passive-aggressive email drafting. He stomps out of the water and onto the sand. Well, stomps as much as someone can when barefoot and slightly damp. Back in my day, he mutters, we had bonfires. Signal fires. Honest, flickering flames. You knew where you stood with a good blaze. He squints at the lighthouse again. Too precise, he adds, like it went to math school. The lighthouse, meanwhile, continues doing what it was built to do, shining steadily, blinking every 7 seconds, completely unaware, or worse, completely aware of the turmoil it's igniting below. Poseidon turns to you. What do you think? You clear your throat. What? It is helping ships. Poseidon raises an eyebrow. And what was I doing before it showed up? Playing tag with dolphins? You don't answer that. You saw him playing tag with dolphins last week. He sighs dramatically and plops down on a barnacle-covered boulder. The barnacles chirp in protest, but wisely stay quiet. I'm the god of the sea, he says. Not co-god. Not regional manager of ocean safety. You nod, sympathetically. He leans back. It doesn't even have a personality. Just sits there. Repetitive. Probably made of bureaucracy. The boulder squeaks again. Poseidon, sensing the need for support, lifts a hand, and with a small pulse of divine power, summons a small wave that washes over the sand and deposits a single seashell at your feet. A gift, he says solemnly. You pick it up. It's shaped like a spiral and slightly warm, which is either a good omen or a malfunctioning snail. Behind you, a seagull lands on Poseidon's shoulder. He doesn't flinch. Instead, he stares out at the lighthouse and says, I will not be replaced by a glorified torch. The seagull nods, wisely. Scholars still argue whether this was the moment Poseidon decided to truly escalate, or whether he was just bored and underhydrated. Either way, you watch as he stands again, lifts his arms to the sky, and begins crafting the first of what will become a series of increasingly dramatic water-based arguments. The tide pulls back just a little. The wind hushes. And then, splash. A wave rises, not too big, not tsunami-sized. Just annoying enough to drench the rocks and slap the side of the lighthouse with a flourish. It blinks. And Poseidon says, Don't you dare blink at me in that tone. You sigh. It's going to be a very long week. By mid-afternoon, Poseidon has moved on from passive-aggressive splashes to strategic glaring. He stands motionless in waist-deep surf, trident in one hand, the other hand perched on his hip like a disappointed father at a school play. The lighthouse, naturally, continues blinking at regular intervals. 7 seconds of silence, half a second of blinding smugness. Poseidon glares harder. You float a respectful distance away, holding a kelp smoothie that Loki left behind 2 centuries ago. It's somehow still cold and definitely cursed. He's been standing there for over an hour. You whisper to a passing jellyfish. The jellyfish shrugs, pulsates, in agreement and floats away. Poseidon squints. It's blinking faster now. You blink. It's still blinking every 7 seconds. He growls. That's faster than it was earlier. I know what I saw. Behind you, a crab drags a piece of driftwood onto the sand and spells out, No, it's not, with impressive claw control. You consider pointing it out but decide Poseidon is in no mood for crustacean commentary. He raises his trident again, this time aiming it at the sky like he's ordering rain from a very annoyed weather manager. Clouds form immediately. Not angry clouds. Disappointed clouds. The kind that arrive when something's about to be scolded politely. A single, fat raindrop lands on your head. Poseidon turns slowly, dramatically. I'm summoning a meeting. You stare. With whom? He gestures vaguely. With the upper bureaucracy. This could mean anything from Zeus to a council of deeply sarcastic dolphins. You steel yourself. Within minutes, the wind picks up and a flock of seagulls circles above. One breaks formation and drops a soggy piece of paper in the sand. You pick it up and read. To whom it may concern. Stop yelling at the infrastructure. Warm regards, Hermes. Poseidon snorts. He's always been a show-off. As if summoned, Hermes appears moments later, not walking, but sliding in on a wave like he's late to brunch and already over it. He's holding a scroll in one hand and a half-eaten pomegranate in the other. Poseidon, he says cheerily, still arguing with large, stationary objects, I see. It's blinking at me, Poseidon growls. It's a lighthouse, Hermes replies, biting into the pomegranate. You don't understand, Poseidon says. It blinked at me. With intent. Hermes squints at the tower, then shrugs. Seems helpful. It's undermining me. Hermes gestures to the sea. Are the waves still waving? Yes. Fish still fishin'? Yes. Storm still storming? Poseidon scowls. Occasionally. Hermes finishes his fruit. Then what's the issue? You watch as Poseidon's eye twitches just slightly. He's having an identity crisis, you mutter. Hermes smirks. He does that every equinox. Scholars still argue whether Hermes came to help or just enjoy the performance. Either way, he doesn't stay long. With a wink and a toss of the fruit rind, he vanishes into mist, leaving behind a faint smell of citrus and bureaucracy. Poseidon grumbles. You offer the kelp smoothie. He takes it. Still cursed, he asks. Probably. He drinks anyway. And just then, blink. Poseidon freezes. You freeze. The lighthouse pauses. Then blinks again. And somehow, it feels smug. Poseidon squints. That wasn't 7 seconds. You sigh, set down the smoothie, and prepare for whatever happens next. Because this is no longer a disagreement. This is war. By day 3, Poseidon has upgraded from glaring at the lighthouse to trying to outshine it. Literally. You find him standing in the shallows with both arms raised, conjuring spirals of glowing sea mist that swirl around his head like enchanted jellyfish with stage fright. He's illuminating the bay, he says. 2 can blink, he mutters, generating pulses of bioluminescent waves that shimmer like fish disco balls. You stand quietly beside a confused octopus who's clearly not paid enough for this. The lighthouse, meanwhile, continues its 7-second routine. Unshaken, utterly unaffected. Poseidon roars toward the sky, summoning phosphorescent plankton to line the waves in dramatic arcs. You have to admit, it's beautiful. Like the sea itself is putting on a light show. But the lighthouse? It just blinks. No drama. No sparkle. Just consistency. Poseidon lowers his arms slowly, his glowing efforts now fizzling as they swirl away with the tide. He stares, salt water streaming down his beard. It's not even trying, he says. You hand him a towel made of seaweed and emotional support. He doesn't take it. Instead, he points at the tower again. It's mocking me with its restraint. You look at the lighthouse. It blinks. I think it just exists, you say gently. He narrows his eyes. Exactly. In an attempt to reset the mood, you suggest perhaps taking a diplomatic approach. He laughs. Not kindly, but he does pause. Maybe it's time to talk, he says, stroking his beard. Not with the tower. With the sea around the tower. You blink. Like the waves. Poseidon nods solemnly. The currents carry memory. You're about to ask how that works when he raises his trident and strikes the water. Instantly, whirlpools begin forming, tiny ones, spinning lazily around your ankles like distracted dancers. Then voices. Whispers. The ocean speaks. Not in sentences, not in rhyme, but in mood. Vibration. Something old and slow. You listen. The sea has a story. Long ago, the lighthouse didn't exist. There were bonfires. Then torches. Then ships began crashing. And someone, not Poseidon, decided it was time for something permanent. A structure. A light. A message. This is where you don't go. Poseidon listens, eyes closed. The sea finishes its murmur. Poseidon opens his eyes. I was not consulted, he says softly. And suddenly you understand. It's not about the light. It's about being left out. Being overlooked by the mortals who once prayed to every tide. He folds his arms. Still rude. You nod. The lighthouse blinks. Scholars still argue whether this moment marked a shift in Poseidon's heart, or just a temporary softening brought on by talking whirlpools and existential regret. Either way, the next thing he does surprises you. He steps forward, raises one arm, and waves. At the lighthouse, you wait. One beat, two, then blink, and Poseidon smiles. A little, just barely, but it's a start. The smile doesn't last long. Barely 10 minutes after Poseidon's awkward, salt-crusted wave, the lighthouse blinks twice in rapid succession. Not the usual steady rhythm. No, this is a fast blink. A double blink. Poseidon freezes mid-step like someone just insulted his sandals. You squint. Maybe it was just a glitch? He spins slowly, eyes narrowing like a storm cloud preparing its thesis statement. Double blink, he says. Intentional. You open your mouth to protest, then close it again. He's already marching back into the surf. I was willing to forgive, he growls, but now it's escalating. You sigh and follow, dragging a kelp-wrapped snack pouch that no one asked for but everyone eventually eats from. Back in the shallows, Poseidon raises his arms once more. But this time, no flashy phosphorescence. No swirling mists or glowing plankton. This time, he's brooding. He begins muttering spells in Old Aegean, a language that mostly sounds like underwater gargling and disapproving grunts. You catch fragments. Mocking stone. Disrespectful blinks. Ancient maritime boundary clause. He's not just angry now. He's drafting a lawsuit. Waves begin to rise, not in fury, but in legalese. The sea forms paragraphs of salt and foam. A particularly sharp one curls into a watermark shaped like a gavel. I hereby summon a council of visibility, Poseidon declares, thunder rolling behind his voice like an accidental drum solo. You look to the horizon and, sure enough, they arrive. The Oceanic Council of Visibility Enforcement. A jellyfish in a powdered wig. Two smug-looking sea turtles with tiny scrolls. A seahorse judge wearing glasses too big for its face. And, floating above them all, a transparent ray who emits glowing checkmarks as it swims. Proceed, the jellyfish intones, its voice surprisingly clear for something with no mouth. Poseidon gestures dramatically to the lighthouse. This structure has blinked out of turn. Twice. The seahorse judge peers at the tower. Are you certain it wasn't wind interference? Poseidon scoffs. Wind doesn't control architecture. The ray emits a neutral boop. You, being unofficial counsel for reality, attempt to de-escalate. Could it be a mechanical hiccup? Maybe a lens shift? The turtles whisper to each other in legal shell code. Finally, the council speaks. Observation phase required. Blinks must be recorded. Counted. Verified. Poseidon huffs. 6 days I've been watching. You want more blinking? The jellyfish wobbles thoughtfully. Yes. Poseidon sulks. The council disappears into the surf, leaving behind a wet receipt and one very confused squid holding a clipboard. You and Poseidon stand in silence. Blink. 7 seconds. Blink. 7 more. No double blink. Poseidon crosses his arms. Now it's behaving. You nod. Maybe it was just a hiccup. He glares. It was mockery. Maybe it was Morse code? Poseidon raises an eyebrow. And what, pray tell, was it saying? You think. Nice trident, bro. Poseidon growls. The tide pulls back slightly, nervously. Scholars still argue, you offer, whether lighthouses are even capable of sarcasm. Poseidon doesn't answer, but his glare deepens. The sea sighs. And the lighthouse? It blinks. Poseidon has officially moved past the brooding stage. Now he's in the grand gesture phase. You know the signs. Arms wide, back arched, waves rising behind him like they're auditioning for a sea opera. He's pacing the shallows in figure eights, talking not to you, but to the idea of the lighthouse. It thinks it's so important, he mutters, kicking at a driftwood log that scurries away. It was actually a crab, blinking all high and mighty. Look at me, I save ships. You murmur. Technically, it does save ships. He points his trident at you. Whose side are you on? You raise your hands. Team no shipwreck. That's it. Poseidon growls and spins back to the water. Behind him, a small school of fish nervously form the shape of a question mark, then scatter. You figure it's time for a break in the action. Maybe a seaweed tea. A nap. Something less dramatic. Poseidon has a different idea. I'll summon dolphins, he announces. You blink. For what? A statement. Moments later, a pod of dolphins arrives, shimmering, enthusiastic, and deeply confused. Poseidon gives them their instructions, which seem to involve synchronized flips and some light message passing. It goes poorly. The dolphins try to form a blinking pattern of their own, but half of them interpret 2 flips, pause, as freestyle chaos. One just spins in a circle yelling something that sounds like beep. So they try for hours. By the time the sun sets, all they've managed to convey is something that could be interpreted as noodle in dolphin code. Poseidon sighs and dismisses them. The dolphins leave, singing a sad, off-key tune that even the seaweed seems to judge. He slumps onto a rock. You join him, offering a limp sea grape. He ignores it. I'm losing ground, he mutters. You hesitate. It's not a battle. He stares at the lighthouse. It blinks, he says, as if that answers everything. Blink. 7 seconds. Blink. 7 again. Unchanging. Unbothered. Unintimidated. Poseidon squints. I think it leaned. You stifle a sigh. It didn't lean. It wobbled. Slightly. To gloat. You shake your head. It's attached to a cliff. He grumbles. Exactly. Somewhere nearby, a sea sponge chuckles. Poseidon throws a pebble at it. Misses. Scholars still argue, you whisper, whether the lighthouse was built on sacred ground or just very inconveniently placed. Poseidon isn't listening. He's staring into the horizon now. You know what I need? He says. You brace. A storm. A big one. Not destructive, just impressively inconvenient. You sigh. He raises one eyebrow. Something with dramatic clouds. Maybe a symbolic lightning bolt. You know what this means. Day 4 is going to be very wet. By sunrise, the sky has already decided it's not going to behave. Clouds roll in, not aggressive, but performative. Layers upon layers of sullen gray, stacked like Poseidon's emotions. You sit on a barnacle-covered boulder, trying to stay dry while Poseidon wades out to sea like he's about to deliver an Oscar acceptance speech entirely in thunder. He raises both arms and the waves answer, rising in synchronized pulses. The wind catches his hair. Somewhere behind you, a turtle slowly retreats inland. He's really doing it, you mutter, wrapping your cloak tighter. Today, Poseidon announces to no one in particular, we send a message. You glance at the lighthouse. It blinks. 7 seconds. Unbothered. Unflinching. Unbothered. Poseidon begins to chant in an older dialect now. Preodicy. It sounds like wind through caves and bubbling tectonic plates. As he chants, the sea darkens, not menacingly, but like it's preparing for a theatrical monologue. You feel the pressure change. The water pulls away from the shore slightly, not enough to panic, but enough that the sand seems to inhale. A single bolt of lightning cracks across the sky, perfectly framed behind the lighthouse. For a moment, it looks as though the beacon itself is crowned in electric fire. Poseidon lowers his arms. You both wait. The wind hushes. Blink. 7 seconds. Blink. Unchanged. Poseidon's shoulders drop. It didn't even flinch. You pat his arm. Maybe it's in shock? He frowns. No. It's just committed. He trudges back to shore, dripping with salt water and mild existential dread. You walk beside him in silence until he breaks it. Maybe it's powered by ambivalence. You nod. Could be solar-powered indifference. You reach your usual sitting rock, only to find that Hermes has returned. He's now wearing sunglasses and sipping something with a little umbrella in it. Nice storm, Hermes says, not looking up. Poseidon glares. It was measured. It was dramatic, Hermes corrects. There's a difference. You sit beside Hermes. He's trying to send a message. Hermes nods. And the lighthouse? It's ghosting him. Hermes chuckles. Classic. Poseidon crosses his arms. It's ungrateful. Hermes leans back. It's not alive. Are we sure? Poseidon says sharply. Because I swear it blinked sarcastically during the lightning. Hermes raises an eyebrow. Sarcastic blinking? That's your standard now. Tone is everything, Poseidon growls. You look up at the tower again. And in that moment, blink, the pause. Then another blink. Double blink. You gasp. Poseidon whirls. Ha! But Hermes waves a scroll. Nope, standard pattern for fog adjustment. Nothing personal. Poseidon deflates like a wet sponge. Even its insults are accidental. You sigh and lean back, watching a particularly bold crab try to steal Hermes' drink. The waves return to normal. The wind settles. Scholars still argue, Hermes mutters, whether this was a divine confrontation or just one sea god's really bad week. You don't answer. You just watch the lighthouse blink again. Steady, precise, unwavering. And Poseidon? He quietly starts gathering seaweed. For something. You should have asked what the seaweed was for. But no, at the time, you just assumed Poseidon needed a snack, or maybe he was feeling crafty. Sea gods have hobbies too, right? Wrong. Turns out, Poseidon is building a replica lighthouse. Out of seaweed. You discover this mid-morning, when you wander down to the cove and find him squatting on the sand, stacking bundles of dripping kelp into a surprisingly detailed tower, complete with little spiral stairs and a glowing jellyfish at the top for authenticity. You stare at it, then at him, then back at it. He doesn't look up. If it wants to shine, I'll outshine it. You open your mouth. But this is soggy. Poseidon nods proudly. Organic. Handwoven. Sustainably summoned. It's definitely something. Loki would be proud if he weren't banned from shoreline construction zones. The kelp lighthouse sways slightly in the breeze. A crab pokes its base and instantly regrets it. The jellyfish flickers faintly, possibly out of embarrassment. You sit beside the god of the sea and ask, what's the point? Poseidon's eyes never leave his creation. It's symbolic. I'm reminding the real one that it's not the only light in the bay. You both turn and glance up the cliff. Blink. Still 7 seconds. Still uncaring. Poseidon scowls. It's ignoring me on purpose. You sigh. Have you considered talking to it? He frowns. I did. No, you've shouted, conjured storms, and now built a salad tower. He squints at you. This is architectural protest art. You lean back in the sand, letting the salty breeze tickle your ears. Somewhere overhead, a gull screams in solidarity. Then something happens. The real lighthouse blinks. But this time, it skips a beat. Just a momentary delay. Barely noticeable. Poseidon gasps. It's thinking. Or maybe it's powering down? He shakes his head. That was hesitation. Wavering. You stare. Or fogged. Again. He stands, energized. I'm getting to it. Slowly. Emotionally. You want to disagree, but honestly, you kind of feel it too. For the first time in days, the blink pattern feels unsure. Poseidon places a tiny seashell at the top of his kelp tower like a crown. It will blink last, he declares. You pat his shoulder. Or it will call in the Coast Guard. Let them come, he says, eyes gleaming. Let them witness the great standoff between salt and stone. A dolphin pokes its head above the surface and says something in very fast clicks. Poseidon responds. The dolphin sighs and leaves. What did he say, you ask? Poseidon shrugs. Something about zoning permits. Typical. Scholars still argue, you murmur, whether Poseidon's greatest battle was with mortals, monsters, or municipal infrastructure. Poseidon doesn't hear you. He's too busy lining up a row of bioluminescent sea cucumbers as a welcome mat for the next blink. Which, by the way, blink 7 seconds. But maybe just a little dimmer. The kelp lighthouse now has a front door. No one asked for it, and it doesn't actually open, but Poseidon insists it gives the structure a more commanding presence. You say nothing. You're still processing the fact that he named it. Glimmerbeard. The seaweed lighthouse is now officially Glimmerbeard. I felt it needed identity. Poseidon explains as he ties 2 bits of glowing eel together to simulate a tiny doorknob. If the other one has a name, we just don't know it. You lean closer. You think the real lighthouse has a secret name? He nods solemnly. Everything does. Even rocks. Even bureaucracy. You wisely don't ask if his trident has a name, too. You suspect it does, and it's probably something like Kevin. Glimmerbeard shudders slightly in the wind, leaning about 5 degrees to the left. Majestic, Poseidon whispers. You nod. A little damp, but majestic. The lighthouse on the cliff, still as smug as ever, blinks again. Precisely on cue. Poseidon turns to it. I see you. The lighthouse does not respond. Except, blink, blink. Another double blink. Poseidon gasps. You lean forward. Okay, that one was weird. He narrows his eyes. It's engaging. No way that was random, you whisper. Right. The 2 of you fall into an eerie silence. The waves pull back slightly, as if listening in. Then Poseidon says, it's time for a formal challenge. You freeze. Like a duel? He shakes his head. A debate. A clash of philosophies. An exchange of blinks. You glance at Glimmerbeard, swaying nervously in the breeze. It's not equipped for that. Poseidon lifts his arms and begins to chant again. The water stirs. Fish circle in curious patterns. Kelp bows respectfully. Tonight, he says, we blink back. You sigh. Of course you do. He begins assembling the blink pattern. Rows of jellyfish, trained dolphins, a shy octopus with commitment issues. They're to flash in sequence, he explains, mimicking the blink rate of the actual lighthouse. A kind of visual rebuttal. It takes hours. There are flubs. One jellyfish panics and floats away. The dolphins keep spelling out snack. The octopus ties itself into a knot and sulks under a rock. But slowly, it comes together. The great blinkback formation. At sundown, Poseidon stands proudly on the shoreline, arms raised, his expression one of ancient confidence and mild confusion. Now, he says, we begin. The lighthouse blinks. Poseidon's formation blinks back. The pause. The lighthouse blinks twice. Poseidon's formation pauses. Then blinks, once and a half. A jellyfish misfires. Poseidon scowls. Again. This pattern continues for an hour, back and forth, like a conversation between entities who cannot speak but desperately want to be understood through rhythmic luminescence. Finally, after a particularly chaotic blink involving a glowing crab and a startled seal, the lighthouse pauses. 5 seconds. 6, 7, 8. Blink. Poseidon lowers his arms. Did you see that? You nod. It hesitated. He smiles. A real smile. Maybe the first in days. Scholars still argue, you whisper, whether this was a truce, a technical malfunction, or just a really tired lighthouse. Poseidon turns to Glimmerbeard. You did well, he tells it. The kelp structure leans further left. Probably from pride. By day 6, Glimmerbeard, the kelp lighthouse, is leaning so dramatically, it's now officially a statement piece. Poseidon insists it's leaning into its purpose, while you quietly build a tiny support system from driftwood and very tired crabs. Poseidon, however, has entered what can only be described as a philosophical phase. He's no longer storming the waves or shouting at stone towers. Now he just sits beside you, legs crossed, gazing out at the blinking lighthouse like he's trying to decipher a riddle wrapped in fog, wrapped in incandescent smugness. "Do you think it wants to be seen?" he asks. You blink. Isn't that its literal job? He shakes his head. No, I mean deep down. Maybe it blinks because it has to, not because it chooses to. You glance at Glimmerbeard, which is currently hosting a hermit crab poetry slam. Are we projecting a bit? Poseidon ignores you. He picks up a seashell, listens to it, nods once, then throws it gently at a passing seagull. The seagull squawks in existential confusion. That's when Hermes returns. This time he's brought snacks. Fresh ambrosia chips, he announces, tossing a bag down between you. Poseidon doesn't even look. I've moved beyond snacks. Hermes sits cross-legged. So you've gone full monologue mode, huh? Poseidon sighs. We've exchanged blinks. We've challenged fate. Now I wait. Hermes crunches a chip. And, what are you waiting for? Poseidon looks toward the lighthouse. For it to understand. You exhale slowly. Maybe it already does. Hermes tilts his head. Or maybe it's a lighthouse. With no thoughts. Only patterns. Poseidon shrugs. Then let that be the lesson. Even patterns need purpose. You all sit in silence for a moment, the waves lapping quietly at the shore. Blink. 7 seconds. Blink. 7 again. Unmoved. Unchanged. Poseidon smiles faintly. But still it blinks. As if unsure. Hermes rolls his eyes. As if timed by a municipal maintenance schedule. Poseidon ignores him. We've stirred something. I feel it. You do too. There's something different about the blink now. Less automatic. More reflective. If that's even possible. Poseidon stands and begins pacing. I think it's time, he says. Time to climb. You almost choke on an ambrosia chip. Climb? The cliff. He nods. I've argued from below. I must now stand beside it. Hermes whistles. You're going up there? Poseidon lifts his trident. Yes. And I shall do so politely. You stare at him. You're going to knock on the lighthouse? Poseidon nods. Hermes shrugs. Honestly, I'd watch that. So you gather supplies. Kelp rope, a few enchanted barnacles, a pouch of courage-flavored sea grapes, and a very confused crab who insists on coming along. The climb begins at twilight. Poseidon moves slowly, reverently, as if he's ascending a sacred mountain. You follow, panting, slipping once or twice on sea spray-slicked rock. Hermes floats up beside you both effortlessly, eating a pomegranate he definitely didn't grow himself. Halfway up, Poseidon pauses. Looks out over the ocean. The sea glows faintly. Glimmerbeard flickers at the base of the cove, tilting just so. Then, in the corner of your vision, blink. Longer this time. 9 seconds between. Poseidon smiles. Almost there. Scholars still argue, Hermes murmurs, whether this was a pilgrimage, a negotiation, or just a glorified stair workout. But none of you speak after that, because the lighthouse looms above now. And for the first time, you're close enough to see the door. The door is small. Smaller than expected for something that holds back the dark. You stand beside Poseidon, both of you windblown and damp, staring at it like it might blink back. Hermes hovers nearby, half interested, half snacking. Poseidon raises his trident slowly, like a gentleman about to knock on a friend's cottage. Then he hesitates. What if it doesn't open? He murmurs. You shrug. Then it's just another silent metaphor. He nods solemnly and taps the door 3 times. The knock echoes oddly. Not loud, but deep, like the sea itself briefly listened in. Nothing happens. You wait. Still nothing. Hermes whispers, "Try jiggling the handle?" Poseidon glares at him. "I am the god of the sea. I don't jiggle." He tries the handle. It jiggles. And it opens. Inside, the air is warm, dry, and smells faintly of lamp oil and irony. The spiral staircase is lit with flickering lanterns. It's quiet, too quiet for something supposedly powered by bureaucratic scheduling and solar panels. Poseidon steps in reverently. You follow. Each footstep echoes like thunder wrapped in hush. As you ascend, you notice strange things. There are paintings on the walls, of waves, of storms, of eyes. One frame holds a sketch of a blinking pattern. Another holds an abstract swirl you swear resembles Poseidon's beard. Poseidon runs a hand along the railing. It remembers. Remembers what? You whisper. Me, he says softly. Hermes pokes a dusty plaque with his finger. This place has vibes. You reach the top, and there it is, the lantern room. Not just a bulb or a lamp, but a crystal sphere, rotating slowly in a pool of light. Surrounding it are mirrors, gears, and humming things that defy logic. Poseidon approaches, careful, reverent. He lifts his hand to the orb, doesn't touch, just hovers there. The light pulses. Twice. Then holds. Everything goes still. Even the wind outside pauses. Poseidon leans in and whispers, "I see you." The light responds. Pulse, gentle. Not aggressive. Not warning. Just acknowledgement. You hold your breath. The room glows softly. It's warm here, not with heat, but understanding. Connection. Hermes whispers, "Well, that's new." Poseidon doesn't speak. He closes his eyes, and the light flickers once more. Slow. Then fades to stillness. Outside, far below, Glimmerbeard leans a little straighter. A single jellyfish bobs up, then down, as if nodding in approval. Poseidon exhales. "We're done here." "No fireworks?" Hermes teases. Poseidon shakes his head. "That was the firework." You look around. There's no throne, no storm, no triumphant soundtrack. Just the quiet, and a blinking lighthouse that finally blinked back. Scholars still argue, you murmur, whether Poseidon truly made peace or simply found someone to blink at. Poseidon smiles, then turns to descend. And the lighthouse? It waits, but this time with just a hint of softness in the silence. The descent is quieter than the climb. You follow Poseidon down the spiral stairs, each step echoing with something different now. Less frustration, more release. The kind of silence that settles in after a long, overcomplicated joke finally lands. Halfway down, Hermes slides down the railing like an uninvited sibling. "So, what now? Is it your friend? Your rival? Your very shiny pen pal?" Poseidon doesn't answer. He just touches the walls as he walks, like each stone deserves a moment. When you finally reach the base, the door closes gently behind you. No lock, no resistance, just a mutual goodbye. Outside, the sky has turned that misty blue-gray where light and fog blend into something dreamlike. The sea is calm. Glimmerbeard leans at its usual theatrical angle but no longer sways quite so nervously. Even the wind feels thoughtful. You turn to Poseidon. "So, 6 days." He shrugs. "I've held grudges for centuries. This was brief." Hermes snorts. "You tried to outblink a structure." "And I did," Poseidon insists. "Emotionally." He walks to the edge of the cliff and looks down at his soggy kelp masterpiece. Besides, Glimmerbeard's earned its place. "Really?" Hermes squints. "It's got sea snails living in the stairwell." "Charm," Poseidon says. You sit in the grass, letting the breeze ruffle your cloak. The lighthouse above you blinks softly now. No longer defiant, just consistent. like it knows you're watching but isn't trying to impress anymore. You almost wish it would blink irregularly, just once, for fun. Poseidon joins you, lowering himself to the ground with the grace of a barnacle-covered boulder. You ever get the feeling you were arguing with yourself the whole time? You nod slowly, but in a really productive way. He laughs. Exactly. Hermes floats upside down above you. So, what now? You going to apologize to the seaweed? Send a thank you note to the cliff? Poseidon pulls something from his cloak. It's a pebble. He holds it up to the blinking tower. Thanks, he says. Then he gently sets it down. The wind answers with a soft sigh. The lighthouse blinks. 7 seconds. Then, just before the next 8, the pause. An almost imperceptible delay. You grin. That one was for you. Poseidon doesn't respond. He just watches. Scholars still argue, Hermes murmurs, whether lighthouses can feel things, or whether Poseidon just needed to be seen. No one corrects him, because in this moment, the blinking isn't just about light anymore. It's a conversation, even if it's in silence. The next morning, the sea forgets to wake up on time. Or at least it seems that way. The waves arrive late, yawning softly as they reach the shore, as if even the ocean needed a break from all the dramatic blinking. Poseidon is already awake. He's crouched next to Glimmerbeard with a bundle of seagrass in his lap, delicately braiding what appears to be curtains. Privacy, he explains, without looking up. Even symbolic lighthouses need boundaries. You don't question it anymore. Not after the kelp balcony, or the ornamental starfish chimes. Hermes saunters over, chewing on something distinctly celestial. The real one blinked twice during the night, he says. Might have just been fog. Or feelings. Poseidon hums. I felt it. The rhythm changed. Slightly longer pause after the second blink. You sure you're not just making that up? Hermes asks. Poseidon meets his eyes. Aren't all myths made up? Eventually. Hermes throws his hands up. Well, look who went poetic. You sit beside them and look out at the horizon. The day is unusually still. Not empty, just full of softness. Like the sea is taking a deep breath after 6 days of watching a god argue with architecture. Poseidon finishes his curtains and drapes them lovingly over the opening in Glimmerbeard. They hang crookedly but shimmer in the sun like sea glass dreams. Do you think it'll miss you? You ask. The lighthouse? Poseidon replies. You nod. He shrugs. Maybe. He stands slowly and pats Glimmerbeard on its wobbly side. We gave it company. That counts. Hermes spins in place. You're not going to try to take it with you, right? Poseidon raises an eyebrow. Take what? Glimmerbeard. You named it. Poseidon waves him off. It belongs to this cove now. Let it blink in peace. He picks up his trident, pauses, then gently sticks it into the sand beside Glimmerbeard. A gift, a guardian, or maybe just a souvenir. Hermes squints. You just left a divine weapon in the dirt. Poseidon shrugs. It's retired. You laugh. So is Glimmerbeard. The sun climbs higher. The tide rolls in with lazy contentment. The lighthouse above you does what it's always done. Blinks, waits, blinks again. But it's slower now. Not broken. Just thoughtful. Like maybe, after all this, it learned that being watched is different than being seen. And that blinking isn't always just warning. It can be response, invitation, ritual. Poseidon shades his eyes with his hand. You know, he says, I think I lost the argument. Hermes smirks, but gained a really confusing reputation. You stretch your legs and lie back in the sand. Scholars still argue, you murmur, whether this was mythology, madness, or just a seafaring midlife crisis with excellent lighting design. The sea doesn't answer. It just sighs. Gently. And the lighthouse? Blink. 9 seconds. You don't leave the cove that day. Or the next. Something about the rhythm here has shifted, Not just the lighthouse is blinking, but yours too. Your breathing has slowed. Your thoughts drift in and out like driftwood. Even Hermes, normally a non-stop stream of commentary, has fallen mostly silent. Poseidon spends the morning arranging shells in a spiral around Glimmerbeard. Not for magic, not for ritual, just for the pattern of it. He calls it visual resonance. You call it god-tier beach doodling. Hermes perches nearby with a giant fig and says, "So what's the lesson?" Poseidon doesn't look up. Not everything needs one. You nod, then add, "But if there was one?" Poseidon stops. Looks toward the horizon. "The world doesn't always need fixing," he says softly. "Sometimes it just wants your attention." You blink. Even a lighthouse? Especially a lighthouse. Hermes chews thoughtfully. "I mean, it is literally designed to be noticed." "Exactly," Poseidon says. "But no one ever asks how it feels being stared at all day." You're about to joke, but the quiet wraps around you like warm sea foam, and the joke slips away. Glimmerbeard flutters gently in the breeze, its curtains tangled around a barnacle that refuses to move. You don't blame it. It's cozy here. From the cliff, the lighthouse blinks again. 10 seconds this time. Hermes raises an eyebrow. "We've gone full jazz now." Poseidon nods. Improvisation is the language of reconciliation. You're not sure what that means, but it sounds wise enough to end a scroll. A crab waddles across your foot, dragging a bit of kelp like a tiny pilgrim. You lean back in the sand. "Do you think it'll remember us?" Poseidon thinks for a moment. Then, "Not the way we remember." "But yes." Hermes smirks. "You've gotten soft." "I've gotten still," Poseidon corrects. A long pause follows. Then Poseidon asks, "Do you remember when the sea serpent used to come through this bay?" You blink. "There was a sea serpent?" "Long ago," he nods. "Before the blinking. Before the argument." You glance at Hermes. He shrugs. "Nobody ever writes down the quiet parts of the myth." "Exactly," Poseidon says. "That's why we tell them now." The lighthouse flickers again. Then again. Irregular. Human. You smile. Scholars still argue, you murmur, whether the tale of the sea god and the silent tower was ever real, or just the story of what happens when we finally slow down enough to listen. Poseidon doesn't reply. He just watches. And waits. And, for the first time in what feels like centuries, doesn't need to blink first. You wake to the sound of nothing. No crashing waves. No dramatic wind. Not even Hermes humming tunelessly into a piece of driftwood he swears is a flute. Just quiet. Poseidon is already up. Sitting cross-legged next to Glimmerbeard, watching the horizon like he's waiting for an old friend to return from a very long nap. You stretch, brush some kelp out of your hair, and plop down beside him. "Last day?" you ask softly. He nods. "Feels like it." You both look up. The lighthouse still blinks, but it's not trying to prove anything anymore. Its rhythm has settled into something deeply unhurried. Like it knows you'll see it when you see it, and that's enough. Hermes eventually joins, flopping onto the sand with a sigh that suggests divine boredom. "So are we going to wrap this up with a moral? A parable? A slow pan and swelling orchestral music?" Poseidon chuckles. "There's no audience here. Just us." You consider that. Isn't that always the audience? No one answers for a while. The breeze picks up, rustling the seagrass curtains on Glimmerbeard. A few fish leap from the waves just for the joy of it. Even the sky feels unbothered, clouds meandering lazily like mythic sheep. Poseidon finally speaks. "I thought I came here to argue." He looks down at the sand, draws a wobbly spiral with his finger. "But I think I came here to slow down." Hermes snorts. "You yelled at a lighthouse for 5 days. And look where it got me," Poseidon smiles. "A kelp tower, a blinking friend, and a vacation I didn't know I needed." You look at Glimmerbeard, then up at the lighthouse. "You know," you say, Maybe it was never about the blinking. Poseidon raises an eyebrow. No. Maybe it was about the pause between blinks. Hermes groans. Ugh, that's so poetic I might turn into sea foam out of spite. Poseidon stands and brushes the sand from his robe. You ready? He asks. You nod. Let's go before this turns into a metaphor about journeys. Too late. You gather your things, what little there is, and prepare to leave the cove. But before you go, Poseidon walks back to Glimmerbeard. He rests his hand on it gently. Not like a goodbye, but like a thank you. No speech. No fanfare. Just one last glance at the cliff, the light, the rhythm. The lighthouse blinks. Then waits. You all walk away together. The tide follows for a moment, just to see you off. And as you round the bend, the last thing you hear is a soft rustle from Glimmerbeard. Like it's whispering to the sea. I was here too. You lie back in the sand one last time. The cliffs are far behind now. The lighthouse just a blinking speck against the soft dusk, distant but not gone. The sea murmurs gently beside you, whispering stories to itself like an old friend with nowhere to be. You breathe in slow. Salt and lavender and just a hint of barnacle. Poseidon is nearby, half asleep on a bed of moss, his beard tangled in seaweed and surprisingly at peace. Hermes is already snoring upside down in a tree, one wing lazily twitching every time a dream makes him laugh. And you just let the stillness wash over you. No need to chase the myth anymore. No thunder. No monsters. Just the comfort of a god who finally stopped yelling and a lighthouse that finally blinked back. The stars begin to appear, one by one, in no hurry at all. You trace them with your eyes, letting each tiny spark settle your breath a little deeper. The sky becomes a lullaby, low and wide and full of forgotten legends. And the sea? It listens. Always listening. Tonight, there are no questions left. No riddles to solve. Just the slow, gentle knowledge that sometimes even gods need naps. You close your eyes. Somewhere far away, the lighthouse blinks. And waits. And blinks again. Not because it must, but because it can.